welcome to Fall Protection in Residential Construction. I'm Susan Shepard. I'm an industrial hygienist with the OSHA Consultation Program. I've limited this presentation to discussing residential construction, and even at that, there's only so much you can go through in a short period. But I think we'll have time at the end if people have specific questions to go over them, and I'll do the best I can, and maybe other people on the line can also contribute it to answers. People know that this can be a very confusing topic to do. So let me see, how do I get to the, oh, there we go. And I actually did this presentation live with contractors a few weeks ago, and I'll be doing it again a couple of times. And I do it a little differently with the contractors because my goals with them are to inspire them to do some fall protection. So hopefully you'll get some ideas on how to inspire others to use fall protection from this as well. So the presentation, I took pieces from these groups of people. The Hispanic Contractors Association de San Antonio, they have a Susan Howard grant. And the OSHA people are always putting photos up, and Marvin gave me some of his slides, and there's probably other people I've taken these things from over the years. So here we are. So why are we here? Well, for OSHA has considered this a fall protection in residential construction a priority. As you can see, it's the most frequently cited standard in construction, with 19,000 violations. I know that sort of seems like a small number actually compared to the number we even see, but there it is. And when you look at these citations, you get an idea about what they're looking for and what's important. The portable ladders, they weren't over 3 feet above the surface. We'll talk about exactly what that means in a bit. People not having the guardrails on at all, unprotected edges, not following through on training requirements, and then there's some others. But you can see that these come way ahead of eye and face protection. And hopefully these provide some inspiration to contractors to actually do that kind of safety work. So residential construction, just so people know that the overriding regulation is that over 6 feet, working over 6 feet above the ground or any lower level shall be protected by a guardrail system, a safety net system, or personal fall arrest system. And there is a provision for an exception that you can do this fall protection plan item, which is not that handy. The exception is there is a presumption that it is feasible and will not create a greater hazard to implement at least one of the above listed fall protection systems. So therefore, the employer has a burden, and it's a heavy burden, of establishing that it is appropriate to implement the fall protection plan, which complies with 0.502K for a particular workplace situation in lieu of implementing a system. So we hear people talk about, oh, well, I'm going to make a plan, I'll just do this, when really what they're doing is nothing. And OSHA is wise to that, and we'll talk about what a written fall protection plan would look like if they did it. And it's okay, hopefully the sound is better. Okay, thank you. So there is a burden for doing that, and so OSHA really expects people to use conventional fall protection when they are on a surface over 6 feet above the other surface. All right. In terms of other most frequently cited standards, we have the scaffolds. Let's let me get this guy. And particularly on ladder jack scaffolds, and we'll talk about them. No tie-off on an aerial lift, and in general, using fall protection on low-slope roofs, and access to scaffolds. No ladder. In other words, they're climbing the side of the scaffold. So this is what we hear from contractors. Why is OSHA picking on us? What's up with that? Well, here's why they're picking on you. It's falls are the leading cause of death in construction, and that's been true always, always. I mean, let's face it. It's a very serious hazard. And small companies have the most fatalities from falls. We see them here. 55% of falls come from small companies, less than 10 employees. And so that's why there's an effort on OSHA's part to go out there and get people protected. And where do they find them? On the roof. 31% of fatal falls are from roofs, and 23% are from ladders. Okay, so it's not the big companies with the structural steel and, you know, that we think of, even scaffolding, but it's the simple stuff, ladders and roofs. Easily preventable. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about the difference between fall prevention and fall protection. And think of the hierarchy of controls when you think about this, that preventing falls is implementing engineering controls, keeping the person from falling. And that can be organizing the work in a different way so that people are not working at height when they're doing something, limiting the number of people, and administrative control of limiting the number of people who would be in that situation. Fall protection is at the other end of the spectrum, where you're protecting the person from damage after they fall. And we're keeping people from hitting the ground, basically. So that is less desirable. The fall hazards that you need to look at out there from all kinds of places: scaffolds, holes in floors and walls, skylights. Here's our skylight over here. They're not really meant to hold people's weight. They have to be guarded. Edges of any sort, roofs, ladders, decking and plywood. I used to investigate fatalities at work for the NIOSH FACE program, and the first one I did was through a decking building. It was a commercial job at South Station, part of the Big Dig, where a guy fell right through the decking, the metal decking. Installing trusses, and that's a difficult one to deal with, and falling into excavations. We're not going to talk about excavations today, but the others we will. Let me go back and look at this. People love this picture. They love to look at this picture here and say, "Oh, what's wrong here?" But so what is wrong here, and we're going to do it again later, is that this step here is actually considered the top step of a ladder, okay, a freestanding ladder. And this is considered a cap on the top. So the highest that this person's supposed to be standing on is this step here. So how do you prevent this from happening? How does he bring the right ladder, design the job, and so forth? That's the thing that people have to really think about before they just think about violations. You're not required to have fall protection on a ladder. Okay, how to prevent falls. Remember, there's a reason why, like in the last picture, there's a reason why people are doing what they're doing. They're trying to get from here to there. They're trying to get the job done. And a lot of times they end up in situations where there hasn't been a lot of planning and they're stuck with the materials they have. And so everything is an upstream kind of situation. Somebody who is doing the assessment of the job to begin with and the spec of the job, they have to look at what are the fall protection requirements of that job ahead of time. They have to take these steps to mitigate, eliminate, or control the fall hazard. And if you can't control the fall hazard, you can't eliminate it, then you provide fall protection and decide what type of fall protection. Basically, there's absolutely no substitute for planning ahead, and we see this all the time. Why are people reaching from ladders? Because they brought the wrong one. Pretty simple. Okay, what OSHA considers conventional fall protection systems are guardrail systems, safety nets, and personal fall arrest systems. And we're going to talk about all of these. The guardrail system is something that we see a lot of, and we hopefully should see more of. The requirements are that you have a top rail, and these are numbers for that, 42 inches plus or minus 3 inches. Must withstand 200 pounds horizontally. This is in the reg. And typically an 8-foot-long 2x4 will do that, no matter which way you use it. So you can use it the up and down way or the other way. The mid-rails have to be halfway between the two and must withstand 150 pounds. Typically, you'd use a 2x4 for that as well. The surface of the guardrail has to be finished so that you don't have problems with that, lacerations and snagging clothing and so forth. And you can't use, you can use cable, wired cable, but no banding. You can't use banding because it might slice somebody in pieces when they fell against it. So 200 pounds is actually quite a lot. You say, well, that's not that much, but you know, you're talking horizontally. So if you even had a 200 or more pound person, how fast would you have to be going to hit that rail at 200? So 200 is quite a bit. And here's a picture of guardrails. This is a commercial site, obviously. And these are just built, simple little connector there to hold the top rail and the mid rail and the toe board on there. There are engineered guardrail system with brackets that you can use to slide 2x4s into. You attach on the side or on the top of a surface or a floor. There's no excuse not to do this. Here's some guardrails on a roof. This is residential construction. And so I ask you, how is the picture on the left different from the picture on the right? I'll give you a minute to think about that. You see, this picture you have guardrail this edge, but not on the rake edge, what they call the rake edge of the roof, which is here. So, and that often happens. People think they're only going to fall this way, but a lot of times people walk right off the roof going that way. So you do need to be protected in going both directions. And you can use guardrails. This is an intervention. Our own Marvin gave me this picture because he went to this site on his way to work, and they had no guardrails, and they're building this massive home. And he told them that they needed them, and these guys just ran right out and did it. How about that? So now you can see that this makes a lot of sense because it means that they can walk freely on the surface up here without worrying about tying off inside the guardrails. Hopefully they have them on all the sides, but at least they got them on this side we know about. So it is possible to do this. It's not that unrealistic for somebody to do. All right, a personal fall arrest system consists of 4 parts, and often we speak of the first 3, the harness, the lanyard, the anchor point, but training is also important. Somebody trying to talk to me?
Yes,
Hello?
because I don't know anything. I know nothing, zero. So I will need a little bit of more help with that bucket thing because I don't know if they are.
Okay. So the big part of this is the training. If people, and OSHA will cite people for training quite a bit. If anybody's using any of this equipment in the wrong way, they usually are cited for training on that case. The key point of a fall arrest system, and probably the hardest thing for people to get used to, is the anchor point. Because you have to, I think maybe the days are gone now where people putting them, wrapping around the stack of the chimney are gone, but I hope so. The anchor point has to be capable of supporting at least 5,000 pounds per employee attached. And how do you do that? How do you know that that's happening? Well, you see here, this is the manufacturer's instructions on here. You do what they say. It calls for 4 nails. You use 4 nails. You use 4 of the nails of the size that they say to use. And you put it into a structural member, not just into the planking that's up there, or the plywood. And it's simple. There's not a lot of thinking that has to go on. So they have people who manufacture this stuff. They have the engineers. They're the ones that have figured out how strong it is. Now, and they will tell you whether you can put one person or two people on there. So if you're in a situation where you're looking at this, and just get the manufacturer's instructions. That's all. And see what they say. And that's really what people have to do. And here's some examples of some anchor points that are out there. This is pretty typical. It can go underneath the shingles. They make them so that you can leave them there if the homeowner lets them do that, or that they can knock off the top. I think this one's a knockoff one. They specify the type of nails that you can use. This is something that would go around a beam and attach. So they make all kinds of these things, and there's plenty of information on the internet about this. These are the connectors and lanyards that attach, various kinds. This one here will probably hold a couple of people as it goes around. You see here the, these are a couple of lanyards that have, this one looks like it can go, this one is probably, you can go from one to another. You can connect to one and then move to another one, and this is what would connect to the person. All right, full body harnesses have been around now, I guess since 1998. You cannot use just the body belts, which also means you just can't tie something around your waist, no matter what you see on YouTube. So it has to go all around you, because if you don't, the body belts will basically kill you. If you're hanging from a body belt that's just around your waist, then it'll squeeze your diaphragm, and it just doesn't work. The only place you can use body belts are in positioning systems. Okay. So where you attach this is a D-ring on the back. Okay, and this is why people have to be trained to use these. They have to make sure these fit, and that they have the D-ring in the right place, and that the whole thing is a system. They have to be used with compatible equipment. Here's a little piece on how to put it on, which every manufacturer sells with their equipment, on how to do this. You know, you could say, well, that's easy. You can just put that on, but then you go out and you see people with them on backwards. You see them tying them here and there. Make sure that all the parts are tied on. It's not too tight. It's snug, but not too tight. So there is a training level involved, and a comfort level. Training makes people more comfortable using them. So once a fall arrest system has been used in a fall, it must be removed from service right away. That's just the way it is. And you must have a rescue plan in place. And this is a key point, particularly of people in residential work who might be working alone. I mean, you're hanging there, and, you know, where's your cell phone in the pocket? What are you going to do? What's the plan here? So somebody has to be with you to help get you down, or call somebody to help you get down. These little things here are not in all of these harnesses, so it's an added extra. They're things you can stand on, and while you're waiting to be rescued, but you're still only going to last so long hanging there. So people must have a rescue plan in place. This is the positioning system. You can see that there's a belt here that's holding this guy on the pole. So bucket trucks use these, rebar, climbing. You see, he still has another fall arrest system on in case he falls, too. So that's body belts, just so you know. Now, safety net systems, we don't see those very much in residential construction. They have a lot of requirements, no more than 30 feet below. Well, if you're on a house, that's going to be on the ground. So you have to be able to, it has to be able to stretch enough so that you're going to clear hitting anything below you. They have to be drop tested and certified. They're just not very realistic for residential construction. They have to be tested. You have to take all the junk out of there that's fallen in. They have to be inspected and certified. People who've done commercial construction see these. When you're doing a long-term project, you can get them up there and make sure they're okay. You have to be checked constantly, though, because things are always falling in and breaking in and so forth. And the worst part of it is that it assumes that the fall will occur. But, there's a lot that can happen between the fall and when you finally hit the net. So it's not the best way to do things. So here we are with our roofing guy, which we see frequently out there. And he is working on an 8 and 12 pitch roof with the only the lifeline tied to my waist is fall protection. He's all set. You can see that here, right? And we see this, and we see people who think it's a really good idea. I think my boss tied this rope to his car. That's the anchor point issue. I hope he doesn't go to lunch. And, uh-oh, is that OSHA taking my picture? Well, yes, it was OSHA taking your picture. So, yeah, this is what we see out there. And this little device here, just for people who aren't familiar with it, this is for removing shingles from the roof. So he has been running up and down here and taking the shingles off of this roof. Okay, a low slope roof is a slope that's less than or equal to 4 and 12. And so this is not very steep at all, I don't know how many. You could go measure your own roof and figure out how that works, but I think you're going to see very few of these in this part of the country because of our snow. So what OSHA says is you still use conventional fall protection methods, guardrails, personal fall arrest system, and a safety net. And on roofs less than 50 feet wide, you can use a safety monitoring system. All right, and people like to say they're using that, but it's not. You're not supposed to do it unless you can't use one of the other systems. All right, safety monitors only when the conventional means are infeasible. Must be part of a formal written fall protection plan, which means that you have to write it ahead of time. You can't see OSHA driving up and say, oh, we got a safety monitor. That's not going to work. The safety monitor must be a competent person, and we'll talk about who that is. They must warn workers of fall dangers, be on the same level and within visual sighting. They can't be in the building. Be close enough to communicate orally and not have other responsibilities which take attention away from monitoring. Like you can't have them doing roofing work and supposed to be watching everybody else. So steep roofs are, greater than 4 and 12. And so the steep roof does not let you have a safety monitoring system, thank God. So everybody on a steep roof over 6 feet high shall be protected by guardrail systems with toe boards, safety net systems, or personal fall arrest systems. And probably the most realistic is personal fall arrest systems if they're doing roofing. So now we move into actual house building. And I included the trusses here because this is really one of the big challenges, I think, for residential construction, to try to figure out how to do fall protection while people are assembling these trusses. OSHA has this thing about, you can assemble it on the ground and pick it up with a crane. Well, I don't know how often that's going to happen because cranes are not cheap. And the other thing is to use an aerial lift to get up there and do the work you need to do. Okay, this is a good picture of an aerial lift, though, with somebody with the fall protection on while he's in the aerial lift. Using scaffolds inside. I think this is what you're going to see a lot of, using scaffolds inside the building. What people used to do, or still do, is to walk these top plates and just build this stuff up there. So the trick is to build something first that you can then attach a fall protection, usually personal fall arrest system to, or a guardrail to. Now this spreader bar here is attached to the beams and the trusses, and this is where you can attach your fall protection. And you can also use ladders to do this. But I think this is a place where people are going to have to be more creative in doing this kind of work. All right, little bit about open-sided work surfaces. This is something that you need to look for on new construction or gut renovations. So if the studs are 24 inches on center, and some people can do this, and sometimes the code will let you do it for some walls, then you're going to need a guardrail across there. If you're using the regular 16-inch on center studs, then you do not need a guardrail across there. Anything, opening is anything that is more than 18 inches wide. So if the regular studs are 16 inches on center, there'll be 14.5 inches between them. Okay? So anything like this, though, where it's a bigger hole, people are going to need a guardrail across there. And that's much more easily done than a personal fall arrest system. Okay? That's assuming that this level is 6 feet above the bottom there. The other time you would need a guardrail is if it's a very small opening. This is a wide opening here, but it's a small opening, and workers are hopping through the studs, even if they're only 18 inches wide, then OSHA's going to not look good at that. That's going to be a violation. Either you have to stop going through or you have to put up a guardrail. All right, here's your classic holes in the floor. This could be a stairwell. This is probably a stairwell. I actually investigated a fatality. A guy fell through a hole in the floor in a new house that was built for the chimney. The hole was there for the chimney. He fell 3 stories. So all of these situations have to be guarded. Simple as that. They just have to be guarded. A floor hole is anything bigger than 2 inches you must protect against. Now, nobody's going to fall through a 2-inch hole, but that is about a tripping hazard. Okay? So that is different. That's less than 6 feet. And a larger hole, obviously, you have to put something on there that's going to hold your weight, not this. This will not hold your weight. Now, why do you write hole on there? That's so somebody doesn't walk over, pick up the piece of plywood, and then walk through the hole. So you have to designate it some way. You can write hole or cover on it. All right, moving on to scaffolds. And a scaffold is any temporary elevated work platform. Okay, so you can build them, you can do all kinds of things to them. Supported scaffolds are scaffolds, work surfaces that are actually on the ground and supported in some way. Suspended scaffolds are hanging from something else. And aerial lifts are the trucks, boom trucks. So here are some supported scaffolds. The ladder jack, which we see quite a bit, and the pump jack we see in residential construction. You can see a little bit of these frame scaffolds, maybe tube and couplers. Somebody has one that they borrow from a friend and they use. Not so much the mobile or the specialty scaffolds, but these two guys are our most popular ones, and you can see they're supported on the ground. Then suspended scaffolds are basically things that are hanging. Mostly what I've seen is the 2-point adjustable. You use this for like painting inside of a tank and window washing. Catenary scaffolds are used under bridges to do bridge work. Probably other places too, but that's where I've seen them. I haven't seen a lot of these other ones. I guess a multi-level, you could use that on the side of a building, but none of these are used in residential. The trick about the 2-point adjustable of any of these scaffolds is you have anchor points for the actual scaffolds here, but you also have to have fall protection and personal fall arrest systems. And that personal fall arrest system has to be anchored not where the scaffold is anchored, because the idea is that the scaffold breaks, if any of these break, that the person will be caught. And that happens. That happens. I saw downtown Boston, these guys were hanging, one of these broke, and the guys were hanging there with one of these attached, and they were just holding on to the side of the scaffold, and while it was the wrong way, it was vertically, And luckily, they all had fall protection on. It took a long time to get them. Not a rescue plan. They didn't have a good rescue plan because they were hanging there a long time. And the fire department came, and their ladders weren't long enough. And, of course, in a lot of buildings, the windows don't open. So they were there for a while, but they were okay. All right, common citations on scaffolding. Now, what did we say before? On the working surfaces, fall protection at 6 feet. Scaffolds, it is at 10 feet. Who knows why? But so one of the most biggest citations is not having fall protection at 10 feet, not using the body belt and lanyard in an aerial lift, not doing proper scaffold access, which is usually climbing up the side of the those tubular scaffolds or frame scaffolds instead of using a ladder. Scaffold platform construction, that's not having a good platform and not training people. All right, so everybody on a scaffold more than 10 feet above a lower level shall be protected from falling to that lower level. And this is the standard up here, 451G1. And inside that standard, they have the different types of fall protection that needs to be provided to the employees on each type of scaffold. And further on in that, in 451, there's a lot of information about the particular scaffolds and some nice pictures of them and so forth. So if you need that information, it's all there. And then there's a whole special part about fall protection for scaffold erectors and dismantlers, some of which is a lot of common sense, to be honest with you, but it doesn't always happen. So here's our friend, the pump jack scaffold. So basically it says the brackets and braces have to be fabricated from metal plates and angles. That's all this stuff. The poles themselves can be wood, all right? And people have nailed together 2x4s to do that, but I think mostly we see aluminum now and a whole set. Each bracket must have 2 positive gripping mechanisms. That's these little guys here, so that they actually hang on to the poles. This workbench can be used as a top rail for the guardrails, and there's a whole thing about the width of that and whether the width is a certain width, if it's really high enough or too high, but let's hope they have something there. Workbenches cannot be used as scaffold platforms, okay, so you don't stand on that. And the poles must be secured to the structure by rigid triangular bracing at the top and the bottom. So this is a little thing you can use at the bottom to put the poles in, which will help brace it. Okay? All right, so it must be anchored at the top and the bottom. And out here, those of us who work in Lawrence, we struggle with a couple of guys down the street in building their pump jack for quite a while until we finally had to call OSHA on them because they were just not anchoring it at the bottom at all, and it was quite high, and you can get slip out easy at the bottom. So they also have to have a mud sill or equivalent so that it doesn't sink into the ground. Top rail and mid rail. For the mid rail, people can use a net and have these nice names about their company, advertising their companies on them. The end rails, let me go back and show you the end rails here, because we see these end rails are missing quite a bit, these guys here. So the guys will look at you with this look and say, you're supposed to have end rails, huh? But this is what they are. And a lot of times they are attached to this side and I can swing. They automatically swing in and out, so you can open and close them coming that way. Okay. All right, and you can now overlap the platforms, but you can't cantilever them. In other words, you can't have them sticking way out beyond the brace. All right, and the ladder jack, this terrorizes me. You couldn't pay me enough to get up on one of these things, but you see them everywhere you go. In this peak, they go on both sides. You can have these, they can put a platform on this side or on the inside of the ladders. And if they're on the inside, then you can use the ladder to climb up and get onto the platform. But if they're on this side of the ladder, then you have to have an access ladder to get there as well. Makes sense, because I don't know how they get up there, to be honest with you. They come up to here and then climb around it, please. So the ladders have to be good ladders. So they can't just take the junk ladder and say, okay, we'll use that for the scaffold. You cannot use job-made ladders. We'll see a picture of a job-made ladder before we're done here, but you can't use them to support ladder jack scaffolds. And that's probably, I'm guessing here, but it's probably because a job-made ladder uses 2x4s as the rungs, and these brackets are designed to go over smaller rungs. Okay. So ladder jacks must be designed and constructed to bear on the side rails and ladder rungs, or on the ladder rungs alone. And, you know, once again, it's just using them the way the manufacturer says you should use them. And the ladders used to support ladder jack scaffolds must be placed and fastened to prevent slipping. Well, okay. You would hope. Now, here's that part on G1. This is the special part about an eye, like different types of fall protection you need on different types of scaffolding. So here's our friend, the ladder jack scaffold, and they must have a fall protection system. So once they're up 10 feet, they have to have a personal fall arrest system because, you know, look at this. You're not going to put a guardrail on there, right? So they need a personal fall arrest system. And, you know, you can raise your hand if you've ever seen anybody using one of those, but I haven't. The other thing about the ladder jacks is you cannot use them over 20 feet. All right. And I don't know. Oh, I guess you could. You could use a 40-foot ladder and put it up there, but I don't know. You couldn't get me up there. All right, roof bracket scaffolds. So this is probably a little bit of a misnomer about it being, well, I guess it is a scaffold. But the idea is these, you must have a fall protection system, fall arrest system, if you're going to use these. And they're really like a supplementary platform to stand on the roof. In days gone by, people used to use what we called slide guards, which would be positioned at the angle 90 degrees to the roof, or sometimes they just nail on 2x4s. I think Marvin used to call them speed bumps. So as you're falling down the roof, you just hit them and maybe slow down a little bit. So those are gone. Those are gone. We can't use those anymore, the slide guards. These, you can use this to put your work on or to stand on, and this one looks a little big for this roof, so it's just an example, but you must use personal fall arrest system when you're using these. Okay? All right, in general, there's some rules about scaffolds. Like everything else I've said, follow the manufacturer's instructions because they're the ones that design the system. Don't make stuff up. Install the guardrail systems along all the open sides. When you're building those frame scaffolds, the height can't be more than 4 times the base unless you're using guys ties because you don't want it to tip over. And here's a tricky one you're going to see. Do not work on snow or ice-covered platforms during storms or high winds. Okay. Let's hope there's a little common sense there. How to avoid falls. Here's a nice little mud sill here. And this is showing you a fully planked scaffold. Okay, it's going to be planked from one end to the other. And we don't see a lot of these, and this is, you know, out of our scope a little bit, but platforms must be 18 inches wide. Each plank end that abuts another must rest on a separate support. In other words, that would be like right here. This is across the support. You can't hang the one that's on top of it out here on the cantilever section. I know it makes sense, but people do that stuff. Why? Because they don't have a plank that's long enough. They brought the wrong planks. These don't look like they're fully planked either, but that's probably another story. And planks must be made of scaffold-grade wood, and it says on it scaffold-grade wood. So you can't just use anything, you know, like a 1x or even a 2x. Aerial lifts. So interesting thing about aerial lifts is, well, they must meet ANSI criteria. Let's hope so. And all these other things. But the main thing is that you have to be secured with fall protection inside there. And you say, why? You already have a guardrail. Well, a lot of things happen with these, and particularly smaller bucket trucks. There was a fatality in Lynn from a phone company guy that basically a car hit the bucket truck down below, and the thing holding bounced, and he just bounced right out and died. So that's the point of that. And these guys probably going a lot further up. Okay. This is where you required the use of body belt or harness and lanyard. The body belt is to keep you in the bucket and prevent you from standing on the edge. This is supposed to be a picture of somebody standing on the mid-rail, and I think he's got one leg on the mid-rail. I suppose it's a temptation to climb up there if you can't reach it if you've got the whole extent of the arm out. All right, worker must stand on the floor. There you go. So this is an interesting case of where you can say, oh, I train the guys to do that. But what does that mean? You know, you train somebody to do that. It means that you have to provide them the means to do the job while they're doing what you told them to do. Okay, so I don't entirely blame the workers when they end up standing on the wrong surface. You know, they're only doing it because they're trying to get the thing done. Okay, never exceed the load capacity. And that's something else that the guy who's in the bucket is probably not going to have a lot of control of. You know, you get them a machine that's too small and they put two guys in it, you know, what are you going to do? Okay, do not move the lift truck unless workers in basket unless adequately designed. In other words, that the truck is designed, the lift is designed to be used that way. Okay, and that's true of a lot of these things. If the manufacturer designs it to be used that way, you can do it. But if it's not, that's the criteria for you. And, you know, there's documentation for all these things from the manufacturer, and you hope that people at least take a look at them. Oh, I see you there, Art. We'll talk about that. And the vehicle-mounted or self-propelled elevating work for platforms training is required, just as we said. Don't do this. This is not a work platform, okay? And does it happen? Yeah. They do make attachments that can go on here that are personnel platforms, but the machine has to be designed for it. And it has to be made by the same manufacturer. You can't just find one and put it on there. Our Baker scaffolds. We see these inside buildings a lot, mostly in commercial construction. But, you know, like back there we saw it in the thing about framing. There's a Baker scaffold in there. And they can be very unstable. However, and never stack them up. I haven't seen this, but I'm sure it happens that you can't put one on top of the other. They're designed actually to be, I think a lot of them are only 4 feet and 10 inches or something like that, or 5 feet 10 inches, so that you don't need a guardrail, but most of them come with guardrails. Also, OSHA actually says that you can stand up there and push them along, but not to do it if the place is a mess. This is the cleanest floor I've ever seen in my life, this picture. Usually when you see these things, there's so much junk on the ground you can't imagine people moving the scaffold around. So I think that's more like the proof is in the pudding. If you don't get hurt, then it all worked out okay. All right. So, I mean, this is ridiculous, obviously. But why does this person do it? Somebody didn't bring him all the parts. You know, as simple as that. And I don't know how he's going to get anything done. Or he might be building it, but this is not the right way to build it either. This is where we have the competent person. Erected, maintained, dismantled by trained workers, and inspected by a competent person. Now, you take a look at this, and a lot of times when there's an awning or something in the way, people struggle to find a way up there, and the ladder may not work. But this looks like a situation where they probably didn't need all this junk. They could have just done this with the ladder, and we're not sure what they're trying to do. But this is technically a scaffold, and if it was well built, it would be fine if it had the guardrails and so forth. but it's not. It's not. So what is a competent person? First of all, they're designated by the employer. Okay? It's not something you just make up as you go along. Has the knowledge and experience required to identify existing and predictable hazards. Okay. And this is a key point here. Has the authority to eliminate unsafe working conditions. And that means that he or she can actually have the authority to stop work. So, when it's the owner's nephew who's like 18 years old, and you say, oh yeah, he's the competent person. Does this person really have the authority to stop work if something happens? So, and that's what OSHA looks for. In terms of having the knowledge and experience, particularly around scaffolding, there's a lot that you need to know to assemble a scaffold and to really understand if it's safe. The people get trained, and I didn't put it in the presentation, but I know that Lynn Ladder, which is in Lynn, does a lot of competent person training, and if you have a question about how to, what kind of scaffold you need or what kind of fall protection you need, for a very specific situation, they're a very good resource, actually. The competent person also trains employees who erect, dismantle, move, or alter scaffolds, and they decide whether it's safe for employees to work on a scaffold during storms or high winds. I mean, you can do that with it's better if a company has a policy, a written policy about that, but the competent person can make that decision, and they have to inspect the scaffolds and so forth. All right, training on scaffolds. Must receive training from a qualified person. This is not the competent person, and everybody argues about what a qualified person is. But people have to understand the nature of the hazards, the electrical stuff, and we see a lot of that. You can't be within 10 feet of electrical line, okay, falls and falling items, the use of the scaffold, how to handle it, maximum intended loads, and load carrying capabilities of the scaffold, procedures for setup, dismantling, or moving it, and the requirements of Subpart L. Good luck with that. That's the whole scaffold standard. But the idea is that there has to be a competent person, absolutely. All right, let's do some stairways and ladders. Here's our buddy on the ladder again. As we noticed before, that ladders, a lot of injuries off of ladders. And there's serious injuries, too. Stairways need to be guarded on the side. They need rails. Have a stair rail along each unprotected side or edge, more than 30 inches high. So our 6 feet has fallen away here. It's 30 inches. And, well, you'll see that sometimes, and sometimes you won't. Now here's the ladders. This is a great picture of people. I hope you can see this, all the little pieces of this. Because the interesting thing is to figure out when are these ladders used correctly, and when are they not, and what's going on here. They must be doing something on the roof, but the idea is they must be on a level surface unless secured to prevent displacement. Bring the right size ladder, no substitute for that. Use as the manufacturer intended. You're not supposed to take apart the extension ladders. 3 points of contact. This is singularly the hardest thing to do, which means that you have to have, you have 2 arms and 2 legs, 2 hands and 2 feet, and 3 out of those 4 things are supposed to be touching the ladder at any time, but hard to do if you're carrying a bunch of shingles up the ladder. So you have to make a plan for how you're going to get the shingles up there without carrying them up the ladder. Using fiberglass when you're near electrical, although most people will tell you that the fiberglass is not entirely foolproof, and the best thing is to just stay out of that 10-foot range. Stable footing, difficult, 3 feet above the surface. Now, these guys are going to here. Where are they going? They're going up to the roof. So this ladder would have to be 3 feet above that surface. Setup angle 1 to 4, approximately 75 degrees. NIOSH has a little phone app for that where you can put it on your ladder, and using your phone, it'll tell you if you're in the right angle or not. Inspecting it, make sure that it's in good shape, and the power lines. So what we have going on here is that these two guys seem to be on a ladder jack scaffold. Okay. Could they be over 20 feet? They might be. And they look like they're going to go up into the roof. So this is okay, but these guys need fall protection, a personal fall arrest system. And this little item here is a chicken, what they call a chicken ladder. It's attached to the roof. Well, they've swung it over the roof. It's got a hook on the other side, we hope. It's not just sitting, we hope it's not just sitting on this scaffold here. Could be. But one thing I wanted to point out here is that, so here you have this roof, and somebody's got to go up there to attach the anchor point, all right, because you can't just fly it in. So what OSHA says is, yeah, the first guy up puts on his harness, brings his lanyard, everything else with him, and the anchor point. He goes up there by himself, nails on the anchor point, and attaches to it. And that's the way that goes. But he doesn't go up there to do anything else until he's attached. He doesn't bring roofing materials with him, anything else. They just go up there and do that. So there's probably about 50% of this is in good shape and 50% is not. But the main thing is that they are not tied off, and they should be. All right, here's our portable ladders of different types. The step ladder. Now, this one here, do not use a step ladder in a closed position. That means you close this up and you lean it against the wall. This is OSHA's low-hanging fruit. Merrill and I went out on a job where the guys had already been busted for doing that, and we showed up for the consultation, and they were doing it again. It's like, duh. They just can't stop themselves, apparently. So why can't you do that? Because this little foot is not designed to be used in that way, and you see that these steps are parallel to the ground, and when you lean them, they are not. They go like that. So they're not designed to do that. Okay, platform ladder, nice. You can stand on here. It's extension ladder, we know what that is. And these trestle ladders, whoops, that's supposed to be over here, trestle ladder, you can go on both sides of those. On these, you cannot go on both sides. Well, this doesn't have any rungs, but you can try, right? All right, types of ladder. Make sure that the ladder can hold the amount of person and equipment that they are carrying up there. Okay. Here's a firm base, the types of bases that a lot of ladders come with. You got to make sure that this is actually working. This pin is not entirely rotten. You can do I have experience with that? Maybe. You can turn these over and they dig into the ground. Although people will, if it's really soft, people like to tie them and stake them. You can do that too. All right, this is actually what it looks like to me, a job-made ladder, the way they're talking about it, 2x4 or 2x6 side rails, okay, and there's a table in the standard that tells you how to make this and how far apart and all of that. And these are the cleats. Here's a beautiful mud sill and a beautiful attachment into the ground, and it's 3 feet over the roof where they're going. And the nice thing about a job-made ladder is you can take out these rungs and you can walk through. It's a nice walk-through ladder, which you're not going to get on an extension ladder. So with an extension ladder, you would have the rungs going up here and you have to walk around. But the 36 inches is needed so you have something to hold on to when you're getting on and off. All right, here's our formerly old friend of the Fall Protection Plan. It said it is not acceptable unless every other conventional means is unfeasible, and only for leading edge work, precast concrete erection, and residential construction. There is a copy of this in the sample plan in the appendix. People need to do that. Fall protection training, all the training you need to have, including rescue. Oops, where's my little line? Rescue training. Okay, there's a special standard for that. This is all in the training standard. Okay, it's a supplement to 1926.21, which is the general training for construction. Retraining is important if people are making mistakes. Now we have snow. Oh, we remember snow from a couple of years ago. Use snow removal methods to not involve going on the roof when and where possible. So do you have to use fall protection on this roof to remove snow? Absolutely. You're over 6 feet off the ground. You absolutely need fall protection, guardrails, or something else. And OSHA will go out there and bust people. And it's slippery. You know, evaluating loads exerted on snow, on roof or structure, total weight of snow compared to the limit of the roofs. So a lot of my friends called me when they had a lot of snow, and they said, should I go up on the roof? Is my roof going to fall in from the snow? And I tell them no, because if your roof has any structural integrity at all, it can handle the snow load. The roofs that fall in are those nice metal buildings that are structurally unsound to begin with. And that's the ones people end up going on top of commercially to remove the snow because they know the building's going to fall down. So there's a contradiction here. The workers need fall protection, and they must use ladders and aerial lifts safely. I mean, so that's the idea, is to use ladders and put on de-icing, use snow rakes or drag lines from the ground to do this. Don't go on the roof. Okay, this is the end. It looks like we just made it. There's a lot about fall protection not in here, and particularly commercial fall protection. One thing you should know is that the new Walking Working Surfaces OSHA standard is a rewrite of general industry, and it actually makes general industry look more like construction. And you can email me if you have any questions, and we can work them out together. Okay, so Art's been writing to me here, and people can see that. So if people have any questions, we got a couple minutes here, or comments, or things that I did wrong. Anybody awake? Well, I was raising the issue about using a snow rake on a ladder. That's right, because you don't have your 3 points of contact. Yep. So you can't do that. So go Falcons. Get out of there, Michael. And Art raises some good points here about hit a pothole while relocating. They can get catapulted out. That does happen. So these things are all important. Slide guards can't be used alone, but they can be used. Yes, they can use, but you still need your personal fall arrest system. Go Bruins. Way to go. All right. So it's turned into a sports chat. That's great. I love it. 2 overlapping ladders on the base. No. As the base of a ladder jack. No, you can use an extension ladder, but no. You can use an extension ladder, of course. So. Oh, not that you stand on. Oh, no. You have to use a scaffold grade plank. That's right. It's one piece. I can hear Lisa talking to me because she's sitting next to me. Okay. Right. So Marvin's got that. If you're going to use 3 ladders and 2 platforms, not permitted. That's right. There's 2 ladders, 1 platform. That's the end of it. No bridging. So. You guys are getting rowdy out here. All right. If people have, particular situations they run into, you know, we can always chat online and with the over the email, because this gets a little complicated as we go along. The presentation is available right down below the chat section there. It says download file, and it says fall protection residential construction. So you'll be able to, anybody will be able to get that who comes onto the line and get that. Okay, I just want to see if there's any more. The PowerPoint does not have